On Monday afternoon, Captain Ray Bowyer was piloting a routine passenger flight from Southampton to Alderney, but to his and the passengers' surprise, a strange object became visible on the horizon.
From my first sighting of it, which was initially 50, maybe around 50 miles away, perhaps 40 miles away from the actual object, it appeared to be fairly small, but it must have been pretty huge. Perhaps, maybe a mile across, perhaps.
Were you scared?
I wasn't too happy, put it that way. I was quite glad to get on the ground and have a cup of tea.
At approximately 2 p.m. on April 23, 2007, Irene Airlines pilot Captain Ray Bowyer took off from Southampton, England, en route to Alderney, a small channel island off the coast of France, with 9 passengers on board.
Ordinary day, little wind, nice smooth conditions, very good visibility, you can see very well. Normal day, yeah, into the cruise, 4,000 feet, no problems.
This short, routine flight was expected to be uneventful as usual. It would prove to be anything but uneventful.
Just a little bit of paperwork, keeping a good lookout for other aircraft, and that's when I saw the first signs of the sighting on that day. It was about 10 miles south of the Isle of Wight. I saw basically what was a brilliant yellow lamp, brilliant yellow light ahead. Sometimes these are reflections from the ground. And in fact, I could see even from that distance that Guernsey was immediately behind that light. So I presumed at the very first sight that it was a reflection of the sun on a greenhouse. Looked at it for a moment, then expected it not to be there next time I looked back at it. Well, this didn't go away. It wasn't a couple of moments, it was a minute and then a couple of minutes. It wasn't a reflection. It was an emission of light.
Growing more and more concerned, Captain Bowyer took out his binoculars for a closer inspection of the object.
It was a definite shape, pointed at each end, about 15:1 ratio, brilliant yellow and a dark band about 2/3 away along from left to right. Don't forget, I'm looking at it through between 7 and 10 times magnification to normal eyesight. I could see exactly, very quickly and quite plainly that it was nothing like an airplane that I'd ever seen before.
Captain Bowyer radioed air traffic control to see if they could see anything on radar ahead of his plane. The following is an actual recording of that transmission.
Hello, 544, zone pass message.
Do you have any traffic, can't really say how far, but by 12 o'clock level?
No known traffic at all in your 12 o'clock.
Roger, I've got a very bright object, didn't say how far, extremely bright, yellow-orange object, straight ahead, very flat platform. I'm looking at it through binoculars as we speak.
Hello, 544, Roger, I do have a primary contact now, very faint primary contact, just to the left, probably your 11 o'clock this time, in a range of about 4 trap miles.
Roger. 544, any more information on that aircraft, please?
544, negative. It's just a primary contact that we sometimes get anaprop on the radar. There is something possibly your left, 10 o'clock at a range of 3 miles this time.
I've got a definite contact by 12 o'clock. Very bright yellow object looking, well, like a cigar.
It's a classic cliche, a cigar-shaped object in the sky. It's what you hear about in reports over the years. Immediately it was very out of the ordinary. He seemed very sure. I was looking for something on my radar that fitted the bill. That may or may not be an object.
Soon after this first contact with air traffic control, Captain Bowyer saw a second object behind the first one.
544, Jersey.
Pass your message.
Well, looking through binoculars as I am now, there's a second one just appeared behind the first one from where I am.
Hello, 544, Roger, and they're still between yourselves and Alderney.
Negative, I think they're possibly over, maybe to the west of Alderney.
Roger. I do have a primary contact, just one blob, if you like, 8 miles or so to the west of Alderney in the vicinity of the Casquettes.
That would possibly be the second one furthest out that I can see. The first one, it may be closer, looks like Baru area, or beyond Baru from me in a straight line.
Air traffic control put the word out to other pilots in the area to be on the lookout for these objects. Soon, another pilot would report seeing something matching Captain Bowyer's description.
Jersey Bladder 832, the zone asked us to look if we could see an object which is being seen by A-line at the moment. We've got something about 8 o'clock resembling the description.
Roger, and 832, Roger, what range would you estimate that target?
Around about a similar range to Alderney from us now.
Blue Island 832, and at the same level or lower or higher?
Lower, I would suspect about 2,000 lower.
Blue Island 832, Roger.
The moment when another pilot said he could see something in the vicinity of Alderney, it really it did make it much more interesting.
At this point, all that was on Captain Ray Bowyer's mind was landing and getting his passengers and himself to safety.
It was getting to that point where I was pleased to descend and get on the ground.
When we landed, Ray turned around and said that he had seen something extraordinary, something he hadn't seen in his 20 years or so of flying, and he was quite obviously disturbed by the experience.
The girl there who works as a crewing, Lucia, she said, you look like you've seen a ghost, you look pale. I said, well, I'm not sure if it's a ghost or not, but it was certainly something odd.
Air traffic controller Paul Kelly immediately went to work to report the incident.
I had taken down notes as I was going along and a sketch drawing as Ray had described it, and I asked him to fax me his sheet from his flight. In the back of the Manual of Air Traffic Services there's a section tucked away on reporting unidentified flying objects. It's all quite strange. You phone up the phone number, which is the MOD, and you get an answer machine.
Paul Kelly faxed his report to the Ministry of Defense. Shortly after, the media caught wind, and Ray Bowyer was asked to give interviews for various shows and publications.
Bowyer, a man with more than 20 years flying experience under his wing, so to speak, saw something extraordinary which later made those headlines as he flew at 4,000 feet near Guernsey. And so did quite a few of his passengers, and so did the pilot of another aircraft that was flying nearby, flying over Sark. And Captain Bowyer is here now to tell his story. Thank you for coming in, and thank you for speaking up, because I know from private conversations I've had over the years with commercial pilots, sometimes when I'm up in the cockpit with them, they do see things, and they tend not to report them because they don't want to be laughed at or have their careers jeopardised.
Exactly right,
so why have you decided to speak out about this?
Well, I didn't actually decide to speak out at all. Actually, the press asked the company, which I work for, would I mind doing an interview, and the company, being quite a forward-thinking firm, had no objection. In fact, pretty much actively encouraged it. So that's how it happened, really.
Well, how did the press get hold of it then? Did passengers?
I don't know. I really don't know.
You weren't the only person who saw
No,
this phenomenon,
that's right.
were you? There,
No.
there were some passengers who saw it, and
Yeah.
also another pilot.
Yes.
Simultaneously. Did the other pilot who was flying over Sark, the island of Sark, did he report it in exactly the same terms?
Yes, because it was sighted, or they were sighted in inside-controlled airspace. The pilot's under a legal obligation, and I suspect this is where the press
stories come from.
And he's filed a report exactly the same as I have.
Well, look, we've got an artist's impression that we knocked up here this afternoon on our computer paint box. Is that kind of what you saw? Is that a reasonable...
No.
Oh, well, it's the best we did.
Be honest, yeah.
Well, hold that picture.
Well, it's pretty good.
You describe it to us.
Well, it was a brilliant yellow object. The brightness you've got there, about two-thirds from left to right, it was a graphite grey section. If you want to call it a fuselage, we don't know yet what it was. We're looking into it.
And how big was it?
It's difficult to say once again, but I saw it from 50 miles away. So any object from 50 miles away must have been fairly enormous.
Well, what, about a mile long?
It's possible, yeah.
Did it move at all?
It probably didn't move, but I had the great opportunity the other day from Jersey Air Traffic Control visiting their radar room, and some interesting traces, let's put it that way, from the radar
Really?
indicate that there's a possibility that they did pick up from both Guernsey and Jersey radar traces, spurious traces they call, for around about 55 minutes.
How long did you see it for?
I saw it in total for 12 minutes.
So what came from the subsequent investigation conducted by the Ministry of Defense? Not much. They said that since it took place over French airspace, it was outside of their responsibility, and they would not be conducting an investigation. So what were some proposed explanations for these sightings? One theory was that these were earthquake lights, a scientifically debated phenomenon where lights appear in the sky at or near areas of tectonic stress, seismic activity, or volcanic eruptions.
When Michael Persinger compared this data with reports of lights, he made a remarkable discovery.
Initially, when we looked at all of the data, we realized that luminous events were one of the most frequent, unusual reports of the previous centuries. And when we completed the computer analysis, basically nature told us, that is the empirical approach, the induction approach, told us that luminous events occurred during the times of earthquakes. And furthermore, luminous events tend to occur before earthquakes. So we began to pursue that one major thrust, which was that there appeared to be a temporal and spatial relationship between an increase in luminous events, which some people called UFOs or odd luminosities or demons or airships, depending upon the culture, and the later occurrence of earthquakes.
There was an earthquake 1 kilometer north of Folkestone, England on April 28, 2007, 5 days after the sighting. However, this occurred approximately 176 miles from where the sighting occurred. I'm not sure any earthquake lights would have been visible from the Channel Islands, if there were any at all. Astronomer Michael Maunder attributed the sighting to sundogs, an optical phenomenon caused by the refraction of light through ice crystals in the atmosphere. He described the weather during the sightings as, quote, just right for setting up sundogs and similar phenomena. He added that sundogs appear at 22 degrees relative to the direction of the sun from the observer, and that the object seen would have been approximately 22 degrees from the sun at the time of the sightings. Looking at these photos of sundogs, however, I personally don't think these account for what was seen. After discussing all of this, what did Ray Bowyer think?
If you had to take an instinctive guess, and I'm saying it's guess, so I'm not asking for professionals because how could you possibly know, would you say that it was something of this planet or something from outer space?
Extremely difficult. I mean, I think a few years ago you interviewed Dr. David Clark on a very similar sort of thing.
Did, yeah.
About 4 years ago. I spoke to him today. He's in charge of a team that's looking into this at the moment. I have been asked a question by the press, and my simple answer was I don't think it's from around here. I can't speculate any further than that.